Second way Drupal, which means a lot to me and my colleagues, is that Drupal is truly without borders internationally. As you will see in today's session, we have Sarat, our developer, who's from India, and Jorge, who's from Bolivia. Myself, I'm from Bosnia, and Drupal communities so large, so international, it really makes it without borders. So those are the kind of two different ways. So what we're going to do in today's sessions, our first demo will be from Sarat, who will show us how to use feeds module and feeds Tamper to get data from a database into, I think we're going to do XML and then into Drupal and set it up as a feed, which a main benefit would be that you'll be able to re-import that same set of data over and over again and delete it at the same time if you notice a difference. And then we'll have Jorge showcase how to set up your first web service interaction with Drupal, how to get Drupal to talk to a third-party system that has web services available. For the demo, we'll be using Avectra. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that. It's a pretty big CRM that is very popular with associations, some government agencies, so he'll be showcasing that. Without any further ado, I'm going to let Sarat take over and walk us through the feeds. You want to sit here? Or? It's okay.
I don't think you can sit down.
So how many of you here have used feeds XPath, Parser, and then feeds Tamper before? Okay, pretty good amount. So how do you guys like that module? Okay. So for anybody who haven't heard about that module, haven't used this module, this is a pretty great session. So I'll show you a demo instead of having a presentation. I'll show you a live demo on how you set up that module and how you integrate that module, how you customize it, and then how you can actually import data into Drupal. So in order to use the feeds XPath, Parser, feeds Tamper, and feeds, you need to have all those three modules basically, which are feeds, feeds XPath, Parser, and then the feeds Tamper. So feeds, as you know, is used for importing content in any kind of format. It can be in a CSV format, it can be in a text format, it can be in an OPML format, it can be an XML format. Whereas feeds XPath Parser is a plugin specifically for importing content into Drupal, which is an XML format or an HTML format. And then feeds Tamper is another additional plugin which lets you tamper with the data before it even comes into the Drupal system. So you need to have all the three modules enabled before you import the content into the Drupal system if you want to use feeds, feeds XPath Parser, and then feeds Tamper. So assuming that you have all those three modules enabled, I'll now walk you through the process of how you actually use those modules and import data into Drupal. So in order to use those three modules to import into Drupal, you basically need to set up two different content types. So for the sake of this presentation, the content types that I'm using are the schedule importer and then the session. So what the schedule importer module does is, so this, or the schedule importer content type does is, this is the content type wherein you upload your XML file that is supposed to be read by the module to import the content. So whatever content is imported into Drupal is going to go into the session content type. So you have two different content types, one for uploading the XML file and one for getting the data into it. So talking about the first content type, the schedule importer is just a basic content type. It just has title and then body, no other custom fields. You don't have to add any other fields. And then session content type. So for the sake of this presentation, the session here I'm referring to are a couple of sessions that are already there on the CapitalCamp website. So I'm taking those as an example. So typically a session would have a title, a body, and the page would have an URL, and the session would have a time, and the session would also have tags. When I mean tags, a session can be tagged as an intermediate session, a coding session, a development session. So the main point here is a session can be tagged with multiple tags. So in this presentation, I will also show you how you can import a session that's tagged with multiple items too. So when I mean XML file, typically XML file would look something like this. So as I said, here, this is an example of a session which is tagged both as an experience session and then also a development session. And then ID is just kind of an unique identifier here, and then it can also have, the session can also have metadata, like meta description or meta keywords, and then it will have a title, body, and then the URL here, it just corresponds to, let's say, instead of session, you have like a legacy system, and then you have like 20,000 pages. So you want to preserve the old URL of all those pages, so that when you import them into the new Drupal system, you want to have redirects, so that if you save the old URL, you can have a redirect there. And then you'll also have the date field. So now I'll show you how to set up the importer. Now that we have the structure of the XML defined, both the content types defined.
If I could just add a little background, how do you get the XML? Let's say you have, God forbid, Microsoft SQL database, and you want to move it into Drupal, right? MySQL. First step you would do, you would convert that database, export it, possibly as a XML. What that allows you to do, you can then tamper with that data using regular expressions. I guess regular expressions is the best way to do it, to get any unwanted fields out, get any embeds, get iframes out, get inline styles, clean it up before you import it. So we'll just assume Sarat's done all that. He's cleaned up our legacy content that it was copy and paste from Microsoft Word for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a mess. He's cleaned it up, and now he's going to move that nice clean code or nice clean content into Drupal and put it in every field that it needs to go.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
What about all the UTF-8 characters and importing that and getting all the funky stuff?
Those characters usually get converted fine if you have, like, instead of ampersand, if you have ampersand AMP semicolon, they usually get converted fine when you're trying to import them as full HTML.
Okay.
And that's what a great thing, that's a great question. That's where the regular expressions play a big role, is to go through hundreds and hundreds of lines of text and convert those for you if you know what's the target you're looking for. So that would be, and feel free to ask questions during session. Or we find that it's best to present if it's the communication back and forth between us and you, and instead of just us talking and talking.
And also going back to the same question, if you have, like, let's say, for example, the title, let's say for all the content from the legacy site, all the titles are not in title case, they're in like uppercase, lowercase, jumbled, and mixed. So there the feeds Tamper module comes into picture, wherein you can use the feeds Tamper module to add in a plugin saying that convert all the titles to title case. So when it's reading or parsing the XML, it will convert all the titles to title case and then imports them. So it's basically processing all the data even before it comes into Drupal. So let's look at configuring the importer now. So the importer that I'm going to use here is the schedule importer. You can add your own importer, like any number of importers. So since I already have one set up, I'll just walk you through that. So typically when you want to add an importer, you'll just enter the name, the description for that, and I can, let's say, call it, I'll say, test importer for this session. And then as soon as you
Sarat too.
So this is where you end up, where you configure basically the importer with all the settings as soon as you create an importer. Since I already have one created, I'll edit that. So when you hit edit, so the first settings are the basic settings. So in the basic settings, all you define is the name of the importer, a nice readable description wherein, so that if any other developer tries to look into that importer or export, he knows what that particular importer is doing. And then here you see that it says attached to content type. So this is where you specify the content type wherein you want to upload the XML file. So this is not where the content is being created. So this is the content type where you want to upload the XML file. So you want to name your content types in such a way that it's user friendly. So that's why I have here schedule importer, so that this is for importing and this is not where the content is going. And then periodic import is a setting. For example, if you have like a continuously changing blog and then it has to be updated on your site continuously, you say periodic import on, so that it fetches the same file continuously whenever cron is run, and then it keeps your site up to date. For the sake of this presentation, I'll keep it off. So these are various time increments that you can specify for the periodic import. And then import on submission is a setting where you're saying that as soon as I upload my XML file to this content type, start importing the content. You don't have to go through a two-step process where you upload the XML file and then again hit a button saying import. So as soon as you import the XML file, upload the XML file, it starts importing. And then process in background comes into picture when you have like 10,000 or 20,000 pages being created that are specified in that XML file. You don't want to keep waiting or just stop doing anything on that side. So you can just say process in background so that it starts importing all the content in the background. You can still continue to use the site. And in the next setting, we'll set up the fetcher. So typically there are two kinds of fetchers. The first one is the file upload fetcher, and the next one is the HTTP fetcher. So what these are saying is that for the file upload fetcher, you're basically uploading a file to the content type saying all my data is in that file, and then use that data to create data in Drupal or to import the content into Drupal. Whereas HTTP fetcher is saying that I have all my content at this specific URL location, so grab all that data from that specific URL location and then import it to Drupal. Since I'm using the XML file here, I'll have file upload selected here. And then you can also specify which kind of extensions the file upload is supposed to use. Is it text file or CSV file or XML file or OPML file? These are the default settings that come up when you configure the feed importer, so I'll just leave them as it is. And then the default upload directory wherein the XML file that you're uploading is also saved in the feeds directory. And then coming to the parser, so the various kinds of parsers that can be used to import content into Drupal. It can be a CSV parser, it can be an OPML parser. So depending on which kind of file you're uploading, if you're uploading a CSV file, you use the CSV parser. If you're uploading an OPML file, you use the OPML parser. Since in this example we're using the XML parser or XML file, we use the XPath XML parser. So feeds module by default does not come with XML parser. That's why we had that feeds XPath parser extra plugin installed. Only then you'll see this last option where it says XPath XML parser. I'll get back to that next settings later on because you cannot configure them until the mapping has been done. So the processor settings are where you specify, so what am I supposed to do with the file that you're uploading? So let's say Drupal is asking the question. So you're saying that create me nodes. The file that I'm uploading has all the content in nodes. Or it's saying the file that I'm uploading is all the user information, so import all users. Or you're saying the file that I'm uploading has all the taxonomy term information, so create taxonomy terms, not nodes or users. In this example, we'll be using the node processor because all the sessions are going to be nodes once we upload the XML file. Since we selected the node processor, here are some settings for the node processor. So the bundle here is the content type of which the data has to be created. So when I'm uploading the XML file, I'm just telling Drupal, okay, all the data in that XML file is the data for the session content type. So it's going to create a session node. Once you upload the XML file, it's going to start creating all session nodes. And then there are various options that you can configure on the screen saying that whenever I upload a file, if it has content that has been already imported, just replace it or update it or delete it and then start recreating it.
So you have to create two content types.
Yes.
And one's the session importer.
Yes.
And then one's the session bundle.
Yes. So the session importer content type is for uploading the XML file. So in that content type, all you do is just upload the XML file that you have all data. So as soon as you hit save on that content type, it starts creating nodes of the other content type.
I have a question. So you attach this to the session importer content type?
Yes, it's attached to it.
But the question is there an advantage of doing that over just going to the import page itself? Because you can just go to x2newtarget.com/import, and then you'll see all of them, but you don't need a content type for that. I'm just asking, is there a advantage?
So you can basically have a record of what all you have used. So for example, let's say you have schedule importer content type, right? Let's say I want to import 10 different kinds of schedules and then I import them in 10 different instances. So you can always look back saying, okay, this schedule importer was used yesterday for these kind of sessions. And then let's say you think there's something wrong in there, you can just hit delete items and it's going to delete only that. If you use directly import, there's no way you can keep track of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So in a case where you would have maybe multiple departments, working and creating their own, in this case, sessions, you can use then Workbench to segment which they have access. They can only delete their own, so they can't delete everybody else's sessions.
And then the other settings on this page are you can say the content that is being imported is going to be in full HTML or plain text or filtered HTML, and you can also specify who the author is going to be. For example, let's say, as Pedja mentioned, there are different departments. So mathematics department has its own admin. Let's call the user role for that math admin, and then science has science admin. So you can say, okay, the admin or the author for this content is going to be math admin. So you can start typing in the author and it auto-populates depending on the role or the user there. And then you can also check this checkbox saying authorize, which makes sure that the user that you selected at the setting above has the permission to create the notes.
Two questions. On the text format where you're referencing HTML, how do you handle relative URLs embedded within the tags? And the second one is, what's the subtle difference between replacing existing nodes versus updating existing nodes?
Well,
One
replace.
deletes it.
Yeah, one deletes it, the other one just does the update statement.
So let's say you have node/1, which is the first node you created, and then you made some changes to it in the XML file, and then you're trying to import it. When you hit replace existing nodes, it's going to delete the node/1. It's going to create a new node ID. It's going to be node/2 or whatever, and it's going to recreate everything. Whereas when you use update existing nodes, it's still going to be at the same location, node/1. It will just update the content that's already there.
Got it. And as far as relative URLs versus absolute URLs?
Well, I mean, that's really the part where you get the XML file to that point where you would do the regular expressions. And Sarat's going to show why we're importing like an old URL. So you're coming into, let's say you're coming into Drupal from WordPress and you never had the clean URL. So you have, blog post, blah, 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 number 37. That's not a friendly URL. You want a friendly URL in Drupal. So we're going to get that old one and use as a redirect, which will help you not lose your Google search rankings because the page is not found, and also will help with user bookmarks, like if people have bookmarked your site.
Thank you.
There's also a plugin, going back to your relative URL question, there's also a feeds Tamper plugin saying that convert all the relative URLs to objective URLs or vice versa. There are various plugins that the feeds Tamper module has. You can also write your own plugin and then attach it to it.
And we'll look at one example of the feed sample as well.
So the last but one step in configuring the XPath parser is the source and target. For example, now you have all the content types set up, you have all the fields in the content type set up, you also have the XML file, you know which field in the XML file is what. So now what you need to tell the parser is, okay, when reading the XML file, because Drupal doesn't know anything about this XML file, it just knows that it's an XML format and it's able to read it. What it needs to know now is, so where is this tags field going into? And then where is this ID going into? Where is this meta description going into? So that's where the configuration settings for the parser come in. Since for the XML parser, all of them are going to be XPath expressions. So the source is always going to be XPath expression. So when you add a new one, it just adds the increments and integer to the right. You'll see that it's XPath 0, XPath parser 1, 2, 3. So the number of elements you need to import, this number keeps increasing. So source is always going to be there. XPath expression, which I'll show in the settings here. And the target are the CCK fields or any other custom fields you created for that content type. And then when you are selecting a target, based on the content type that you already selected in the previous settings, it will auto-populate the list with all the fields from that content type. So once you configure the source and all the fields that the data is supposed to go into, that's when you go into the settings, which is the last step in the configuration of the parser. So here basically what you're telling is, you're telling Drupal that all my real content is starting from table, because each table here, each table tag has all the data. Here you can see that a table starts here, which means the session for that data or the data for that session starts here, and then another table starts, which is the data for another session. So you need to escape the first two tags here, which are the PMA XML export and the database. So that's what you specify here. That's what these two slashes mean, saying that look until you find a table. So escape the first two tags. And then the syntax for all the XML XPath expressions is the same. Basically, you're saying that the name of this particular tag is content, and the name for this particular tag is title. For this, it's body. So if you look here, you'll see that the column name is title, which corresponds to the first setting here, and then body is body. So basically, you just need to map all the names from the XML file into the settings here. So once you have all the settings here, you just save it, and then you're done. That's it. The XPath parser has been configured.
Do you need a unique field for this?
Yes. I haven't configured any unique field here right now, but let's say you have content of 10,000 pages, and then the next time you don't want to overwrite or want to keep them unique. You can use something like an ID that I have here. So what that makes sure is, it makes sure that the ID, if it already exists, it's not going to import that node again into Drupal. It will skip that node and then go to the next node and then try to import that. So let me talk about the feeds tamper here before I start importing the content. So as I said, feeds tamper is a plugin that lets you tamper with the data. So the data here I'm talking about refers to the tags in this example. So as I said, a session can be tagged with multiple tags like experience and development. So the tags here in Drupal is a taxonomy list. So a content can be tagged with multiple taxonomy terms, but Drupal doesn't know when it's reading these tags that experience and development are two different tags or taxonomy terms, and it's supposed to tag the session with both the terms. So that's where the feeds tamper comes into picture. So when I hit tamper, when I go to the tag settings, you'll see that there's a plugin that's already added, which is an explode. So explode is basically a PHP function. What it does is, when you say explode an array with this character, so as soon as it encounters that character in the array, it knows that that's the end of that element and a new element is starting in that array. So what I'm saying here is that explode the tags with comma. The reason being, since there is a comma separating all the tags here, it knows that when reading the parser or when reading the XML, it knows that, okay, experience is a tag. It has encountered a comma. So the next tag is starting now. So it knows that experience and development are two different tags. So there are various other plugins that the feeds tamper module comes with. For example, you can use HTML entity decode, you can use encode, you can explode, you can implode. You can also convert the case, as I said, the title case. You can also use regular expressions, and it's not even limited to just this. You can create your own custom plugins and then take advantage of that. So now that we have the XPath parser set up, all the content types set up, XML is ready to import, and we also have the feeds tamper set up, let's import the content now.
And for a second, just before we import, to kind of explain what the earlier question was. So you have one content type which is going to hold your content. You create the second one so you can reuse it over and over, which is going to be your importer, and it acts like a middleman. So what Sarat hits import, it's going to go really quickly. We're only importing like 8 nodes. But the difference is, once you do an import, what happens is Drupal starts reading the files, checks your mapping. It says title goes into title, body goes into the body, and what goes where. If it needs to do any tampering, that tampering happens right before it saves the node. So it loads up, for example, we're doing explode. It'll load up the tags, and it says, oh wait, this has 2 tags. Let me explode it, save it as 2 different items, then it moves on. So with feed tamper, you can actually do it on the fly, regular expressions. You can convert case. You know, title was, some people did it as uppercase, some lowercase, some mixed it. You can transform all that data before you save it, so you don't have to spend the time with the editors or with content managers trying to fix that, which is a manual process, would probably take forever on 10,000 nodes. Feeds tamper, you decide as an organization, all our titles will be uppercase. Feed tampers will do it as you import it in. That's right.
A question. This seems like a fairly simple XML, obviously. It's classic. What if you had multiple levels inside of a column? You had another table, for example. Would it be easy to explain it?
Yeah.
It all depends on how you like structure here. As I said, let me go back to that. So as you said, if you have multiple levels, so accordingly you change this.
Yeah,
so you have
there's an expression that
exactly
express that.
Yes.
Yeah, so it can be nested as deep as you want it. So if you look here, if you can put these two next to each other. So here we have, it starts with, so we have the top level, second level. Here we're using the escape character saying, you know, ignore the first two, go after the table. So it finds the table, then it checks is the name of that table content. So that same carries here. This is used as the base. So within that, you could have a nested XML that goes however complex it needs to be. You will just need to adjust these and say, look for a column with this name, and it'll find it. So it doesn't matter. It'll still look into this context. So you can have, if you have like a, let's say we're importing here. So in our case, the keywords Drupal and development are coming in as taxonomy terms. Well, let's say that taxonomy term needs to have their own description that might be nested inside this column. You would just say escape a column, then look for the column within that with this name. So you can, I mean, as complex as it can be, you can code it in.
So as I said, in order for the content to be imported into Drupal, you need a new content type called schedule imported. So I'll now create a content of type schedule importer, wherein I'll upload the XML file. So when I said before that the schedule importer content type is just a normal content type that has just title and body. So initially when we create the content type, it just has title and body. But when you attach it to the feed importer, it automatically adds a file upload field here. So this has not been manually added, this particular feed upload field. So this is added by default by the parser when you say it to the, when you tell the parser that I'm going to use schedule importer as the content type to upload the XML file. In case you're wondering where this file upload field came from. So I'm uploading that XML file. And then as soon as I upload it, it automatically parses through the XML file, does all the tampering, whatever plugins have been added, and it creates the content. So if you go to find content now, so you'll see that 8 sessions have been created, and you can also look at the session data. So you'll see that it's got the title, it's got the body, it's got the tags, and you can see that the tags have been broken into individual tags because of the feed Tamper plugin that we added. And then it's got the old URL and it's got the date too. So you can click on one of the tags and you'll notice that it's got all the sessions and then tagged them with the right tag. And this advantage with using the new content type or an extra content type for importing using feeds parser is you can always look at the log here just for that particular content type. So you'll see here that when I started importing and then how many nodes it has created, and then let's say once you got all the content, you realize that okay, I should have added one more plugin or I should have made one more change before importing the XML file, and you realize that there's something wrong in the XML file, you can just hit delete. So if you go to that schedule importer and then just hit delete items, it will delete all the content that you have created. And when you go to content now, you'll see that all of them are gone. And let's say you figured out what the wrong with the XML file was, and then you made the changes to the XML file and you're ready to import. You can just either edit this and then re-upload the file that you made the changes to, and then hit save. It will take the new file now, but it does not import it yet because you edited an already existing content. So that extra step that's involved here is you go to the page again and then hit import. So if you go to find content, you'll see now all the 8 sessions are back.
And this is a sample example. I mean, just imagine this spread across an intranet or a larger website where you have, 20 different editors creating their own content or importing content. They won't run into each other just because not everything's tied into the same content type. They can only delete what they create. That was a question.
Will this work same if you are importing from a CSV file?
Yes, you can use a CSV.
You can delete all the nodes and then you can re-import it?
Yes, so the feeds gives you the ability where, especially where you have segmented content, the news, the events, the sessions, I mean anything that you can break out, journals, memos, you can have an importer for that makes it easy for you to delete, re-import, and it comes very useful during migration because, as we all know, you have to do migration multiple times.
The advantage of using an XML file or a CSV file is when you have a CSV file, let's say the body field might have like 10 commas in it, And then when you're trying to use a CSV file, it might break the body field into 10 different columns. That's the disadvantage of having a CSV file. I mean, CSV file can be separated with $1 or $2 or $3. Instead of using the comma as a separator, you can configure the CSV to use $1 or @ symbol or any other symbol, as a matter of fact. But the content can have any of those symbols, so you won't be able to rely properly on the CSV file. So in that case, using an XML file is more advantageous. So if you can build out an XML file, then you can use the XPath parser so that you don't have to go through the pain of validating all the content that you imported through the CSV file.
Let's say your importer does have a unique value, and then you created session import here of schedule importer type. Let's say you created another node of schedule importer type, and you run that import. Is that unique ID unique to that node, or is it unique to that?
Yes. Let's say I import sessions for a different conference or a different camp now, right? So it will have its own node. So when I hit delete items on that, it will delete only items that have been imported through that particular content.
But I mean, if I upload again, is that going to conflict with the unique?
Well,
other node?
if it's using the same parser, it will make it unique. It'll tell you if there's a match.
Okay.
Because you're in the end still importing the same content type, but you can have multiple number. Like we have a session import that could be session import today's date, session import 2012.
Like let's say instructions for authors. Let's say the title is unique, and then I import a node called instructions for authors with your one that you just created, and you create another importer that has a title of instructions for authors, and you upload it. Is it going to overwrite that one, or is it going to make another one?
If title has been set up as unique when you're configuring the importer, when you have the source and target, if you have title set up as unique, it's not going to recreate it because it's going to still use the same parser.
So ideally you should rely on a unique session key instead of title or something like that. But
Okay, that is how basically you use feeds parser, and then feeds Tamper to import content into Drupal. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sarat. Next we have, for our second demo, Jorge is going to show us how to import similar to this, but instead of using database export or anything, he's going to talk to a third-party service, which in this case is a .NET solution called Avectra, which is a client relationship management system, and it's Jorge's going to tap into their web services. He's going to show us how he's going to connect to them, pull events, and then he's going to create nodes programmatically instead of using feeds. Jorge?
Hello, my name is Jorge, and yes, I am a Drupal geek. So I wanted to talk to you about Avectra. How many people have used Avectra here? Nobody? Oh, wow.
Salesforce?
It's going to be easy for me then. To be able to do Avectra, we basically need to have two contribute modules. It's going to be one is NetForum interface, and the other one is going to be NetForum authentication. Let me sit down.
Just turn this
These two modules are going to allow us to connect between Avectra and Drupal using the functions and everything that we need. Avectra uses two kind of SOAP. Everybody knows SOAP? Somebody knows SOAP? Yeah. Avectra uses two. Huh?
Hopefully we all use SOAP, but you know. I mean.
Yeah.
At least once a day, you know? So basically, Avectra uses two kind of version of SOAP. One of them is 1.1, the other one is 1.2. In this session, what we are going to do is to use 1.2. What we are going to do, the demo that I want to show you is I'm going to create a module that is going to basically connect between Avectra web services and retrieve the information from them and save it as a node programmatically. Okay, so I want to show you, I have created a view. Of course, we don't have nothing right now. And I created a content type. We need a content type where we are going to store the information. As you can see, we have title, registration day, event day, location, short description. And one more thing, for validating that one that you were talking about, we are going to use the unique key that is going to give us for each event. So we are going to store that one to verify that if the node exists or not, okay? So let's go to the code.
Which is kind of going back to the similar, having that unique ID that's different between content, so you reduce the risk of duplicates.
So let's see how it looks like. As you can see, we have to define the credential that we need for doing the authentication between Avectra and ourselves, or in this case, it's going to be Drupal. We need a file that is called WSDL. That file is going to give us all the functions. I want to show you how that file looks like, and it looks like that. Basically, it's an XML file, but this one has information that we need for retrieving information from them, okay? Usually, this one, as you can see, has a parameter WSDL. But also, the same URL gives us this nice information that is going to be all the functions that we need to use, or we are going to be able to use to retrieve each of what we need.
And this kind of ties in what we were talking about earlier, Drupal without borders. This is a .NET solution that's going to allow Drupal to do any of these functions as long as Drupal can authenticate, and that's what Jorge is going to showcase, how we're going to get events, but you can do more than that. You can create users, you can delete users, you can pull in professional directory, you can pull out products, store, e-commerce, single sign-on. This is what allows Drupal, as long as the third party is willing to play with Drupal, Drupal can do the job and play well with it.
Sure.
Just to be clear, you talk about SOAP, you talk about Wisdom, but is this specific to .NET platform or any
No.
SOAP?
Oh, any
connection that you have, so basically. That is why I wanted to go to the code to see what parameters we need for authenticate ourselves. Okay.
And you know, for testing purposes, if you haven't ever done, for example, Avectra requires that you authenticate with their web service before you do anything, so that means you have to have an account. But there are a lot of, I think, W3S Schools provides a free API you can play with. Data.gov is the big one. They have a unlimited number of APIs. You can just get a developer key or any kind of key and play with that kind of freely.
So the net forum module works with all different kinds of SOAP connections?
No, it's specific to this. It's basically a wrapper class for the SOAP. But even with just the file, what we're using it for is we don't have to define function like authenticate again. You know, it's a wrapper class in a way.
Net forum authentication and net forum interface, what it's going to provide us is basically the functions easy to use, basically. So I am enabling them to use it in this mode. So as you can see here, we have the URL. I show you the URL, how it looks like. It looks nice, and also it gives us the XML with all the functions in there. We are going to define a username and password, and also we need to define a namespace. In this case, usually is on Avectra, it's going to be on demand. So after that one, I'm creating my custom function that is going to be basically, it's going to call a sub-client, a new sub-client. This one is a PHP function that is going to send the Avectra URL, the version of the sub that we are going to use, if we want to trace it or not, and the sections. We are going to generate a try. So if we have any problems or something, Drupal can let us know at that moment. And for this one, we are going to start sending parameters. So the first parameter that we need to do is for authenticate. authenticate, we are going to go here, and I'm going to show you the function. I don't know if you can see there, but
zoom in.
Let me zoom in. So we are using SOAP 1.2, as you can see here. We need to send, they are saying that we need to send 2 parameters, username and password, okay? And what we are going to get from them, we are going to get an authentication token, a unique token that one is going to be as our single sign-on, okay? From that moment, we can connect and we can do anything that we want based on our account. I wanted to show you that how we are sending and how we are going to retrieve. Basically, we are sending XML, retrieving XML. So we already create a connection here. We are calling the function now, and we are going to receive the XML. With the XML, what I'm doing here right now is going to be generating the DOM document. I'm going to generate a nice XML and start reading it from that. You know, I'm going to start reading until I find the token. Once I find the token, basically I can do anything else after that.
So getting the token and basically storing it is the first step, because Avectra does require us to authenticate to tell Avectra we have access to execute this command. We have now after this, Drupal has access to delete the full database on Avectra side.
Yeah.
If we wanted to. So this is the first step. So now we're talking. Now we can get some stuff done.
Now we can start retrieving the information. Once we need to create a header, a SOAP header. It's like a header for an email. So we are going to start like a communication between them. This header is basically a PHP also function that we are going to send the namespace now. No, we are not sending the URL anymore. We are sending the namespace. What we are going to do, in this case, authorization token, and the other thing is going to be the array with the token. Once we have the SOAP header, what we are going to do now is define what we need. Okay? What we need is one function that it says get event list by name. So we are going to retrieve every event from Avectra. Okay? This one, you have to remember that this event that I'm retrieving is from the username and password that I have from that username. I'm not retrieving the entire database from Avectra. So the parameters I need to send to them is going to be CNAME and record date. In this case, I'm sending wildcard, so it means that I want everything that you have for me. Okay? Once we have this information back, and I can show you here, get by name. So we are calling this function. Let's go again. So 1.2. What we are sending is the token. We already have that. We are sending the CNAME and the record date. That is going to be wildcards and everything that we have. And what we are going to receive is going to be, again, the token, but we are going to receive a response based on XML. Okay? So that XML, we can transform that XML into an array for easy manipulation. You know, it's going to be easy for us to manipulate an array instead of an XML. So that is why I am putting this function here, simple load string, simple XML load string. That one, what it's going to do is to retrieve the XML and convert it into an array. Now we have the information that we need. From here, the only thing that we need to do is to store the information in Drupal. Yeah, we have everything now. So I'm calling a custom function, node save, and I'm sending each of the records one by one in a for loop. If we jump into the node save, you're going to see that I'm sending the result from the array, and I'm sending the information that Avectra is sending me. For example, product name, event and standard registration, those are Avectra variables. Okay? So I'm starting to save those in variables, and the next thing is going to be to verify if the event exists. So what we are going to do is to grab that key, that event key, as you can see here. We are going to grab that key, and I'm going to verify it against the fields if exist. So if the record exists, what it's going to do is to note the load. It's going to retrieve the ID, and the only thing it's going to do is update anything that is already there. If doesn't exist, we are going to create a new STD class, in this case a new node, and from events, and we are going to prepare that all. Okay? Once we have those two things, what we are going to do is programmatically start adding information into each of the fields in the content. Okay? The first thing that we need, and there is a lot of variables that we need, it's not here right now, but the first thing that we need is going to be languages. What language is the content? If this is the status, we can add the publisher, we can add things like that, date. And this one is good in a way that if you have a content, for example, that the date is, like, for example, a news. Usually the news are 2021, you know, something like that. But I want that date to show in my information. We can store that one too. How we want to send the content in full HTML, filter HTML. Also, we can define that one. So basically, we start adding the information that we have here. We are adding into the fields now, and we are going to try to submit the node. Submit the node, what it's going to do, basically, is going to say to Drupal, can you verify if everything is all right? And Drupal is going to say, okay, everything else is all right. And it's going to say true. And then we save the node. Like, this one is events, and usually events change. Yes?
Since you got the XML file earlier, would it be possible to use the feeds importer at some point there?
No. In this case, is different. It's returning different.
You could do the same thing. You could save this instead of saving it directly into Drupal. Save it as an XML.
And use feeds
then
importer.
use the feeds importer. Watch route. It's using it this way or using the feeds, putting them side by side. It's kind of, they accomplish the same thing in a different way for a different use case. In one case, we already have the data we're manipulating. In this case, we're getting the data from a third party. Let's save it as an XML and import it with feeds. You can do that, but if it's something that we need to refresh every hour, you can do it this way. In the end, they both accomplish the same thing. They get the content.
I don't think you can authenticate with feeds.
You can.
You can.
Right.
You can, but so you would have to use this to save the XML
And then
and
use
then
an XML.
import it. It would create a two-step process.
The other thing about what we are getting from Avectra is the XML. It looks like an XML, but it's a WSDL file.
And
So-
I think we have guys waiting for next session.
Yeah.
So the last thing we did was hook this up to the cron job in Drupal. So every time a cron job runs, Drupal goes to Avectra, say, hi, where's my authentication token? Gets the event, updates, or creates new nodes. And we can run the cron real quick, Jorge.
Sure.
So I know we're kind of running out of time.
I know.
But we have a booth downstairs, new target. Come see us if you have questions. Glad to answer them, and we'll be here all day.
I'm going to enable the module first. And let me. So integration, we enable the module. Save configuration. And we run the cron now. We run the cron. And we go to events, and there you have. So it's coming from Avectra.
So you're basically just calling the custom module when you're in the cron job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can add anything into the cron. So we've created a custom module that will, it's a small module. All it does, it goes to and gets the event. So if you go switch back to the code, we're just adding it to the Drupal cron with
With
three
a
lines
hook.
of code.
That is the Drupal.
And you don't even need the Drupal set message, but we like to have that so it tells you whenever it's gotten it. So you can add anything to the cron, anything that you need to
So
run.
in this case, it's going to refresh every 3 hours the
Can you show me
event.
the cron?
This one,
How you, basically how you set it up in cron to run this?
no, this one is
that's
with-
That's a
does
hook.
it.
That's a
Oh, just
Drupal
that.
hook.
This one
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
So basically, the name of the module and cron. Any
All right.
questions?
Thank
No?
you.
Thank
Your
you.
Questions, please ask.
Okay.
Jorge Norris.